دایی یه فرصت خوب حالا پشت مدافع خداداد عزیزی توی دروازه گل برای ایران خداداد عزیزی باز هم روی زمین گشت سردار آزمون به توی دروازه سردار آزمون گل به نام آزمون برای ایران
بزنه کریم انصاری گل توی دروازه کریم انصاری دروازه پرتغال باز شد
علی دایی سام توپ توی دروازه
یه اشتباه حرکتی از کوچان نژاد فرصت داره کوچان نژاد توی دروازه گل برای ایران. Welcome back to Bezan podcast. My name is Arya Allahverdi. I'm joined by Sahand, Salari and Pezhman. Lads, how are you both doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Arya.
Hi, Arya. Nice to hear your beautiful Scottish accent again. It's all good over here.
Yeah, thanks very much. Guys, we got a draw for this last round of qualifiers. We're in the same group as South Korea once again. We're also in the same group as UAE, Iraq, and Lebanon. If you haven't listened to our first part of this podcast, we did got analysis from experts and journalists from each of the countries that we're in the group with. So check out that first part first to get some analysis on the opponents. But in today's episode, we're going to be speaking about our own national team, Team Melli. We're going to speak about how they can fare against these 5 teams that we've grouped against, and also a little bit about Skočić remaining as the national team head coach. We've also got some fan reaction from Sina from Radio Offside, and also Dara Zarandi, contributor for PersianFootball.com. And yeah, guys, let's go. So Group A, Iran again with South Korea, UAE, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. What was your initial reaction to that, Sahand?
I think my initial reaction was that we probably got the easier group. Well, I think avoiding Saudi Arabia, I think they were the pot 3 team with UAE. So I think we definitely got the weaker of the pot 3 teams. Because I think Saudi Arabia, I mean, I know on the international level, international tournaments and stuff, they haven't really been that great. But for the Asian standard, I think technically they're one of the better teams, and they usually historically have given us problems, and the rivalry is pretty intense. So I thought avoiding them was definitely made this an easier group for us. And then I thought that in the pot 2 teams between Korea and Australia, I think both of them are weaker than in previous years. But I don't really have an issue with playing either of them. But yeah, we have more experience against Korea, and we haven't lost to them for a really long time. So I think that the group was definitely an okay draw. I think it's not going to be, it doesn't strike me as particularly challenging. I mean, there was some possibility about a group of death or something, and that didn't really happen. So yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute there. Pezhman, give your reaction. Obviously, we got South Korea again. We've also got Syria again as well. So how was your kind of reaction to that?
Yeah, well, I wanted Iran to play against Australia, but somehow they managed to not face each other since 1997. Although Australia came into Asian Federation for the World Cup 2006, I believe, but that's over 14, 15 years now they've been in Asia, and Iran have managed to avoid them both in the Asian Cup and in the World Cup qualifiers, and no friendlies. So I would like to see that rivalry, because somehow I do believe that Australians think that they're still probably the best team in Asia, or they can win against Iran. Maybe they can, but I do believe that Iran can beat them in both home and away. Yeah, other than that, I think this was probably the best group that Iran could have. And I'm not saying that because for Iraq and China, probably China is a weaker team, but we must not forget the travel distance that the Iranians have to have to do if they were going to play against China and Vietnam. It could be and Australia instead of South Korea, because I believe it's an even longer trip from Iran. So that's very positive. That means that, and as I'm saying it because we know from history that the Football Federation have a hard time to prepare these players for these long trips, and that can bother a lot of players, like adjusting to the weather, to the time. And now we have almost all the games in the Middle East except the away game in Seoul in South Korea. So I'm really pleased with that, and I do believe this is Iran's qualifications to lose, because nobody else can take it from them rather than the Iranians themselves.
Just building on that point, also, I think that especially with the amount of like legionnaires that we have right now, that aspect of added travel was really important to avoid, because like you said, Pezhman, I mean, if we're going to have like basically the entire starting 11, over half the team is flying in from abroad, if they have to fly in and then also you're going to get them all together later, and then you have to fly to, say, Vietnam, China, Korea, Australia. It's going to be, from a logistical standpoint, very difficult to deal with, and also from a fatigue standpoint for the players, I think it would have been super challenging. Yeah.
So you guys mentioned obviously that the one away game is in Seoul. That's quite far, obviously, but that is the only one game that we have to go outside of the Middle East. We've had quite good success against South Korea. We, beat them to qualify for the 2014 World Cup, for the 2018 as well. I don't know if we beat them. Did we beat them?
We beat them in Tehran, and then we tied them in Seoul. Yeah,
so we've done well against South Korea. However, it's different scenario. There's no Carlos Queiroz anymore. It's a different team. South Korea, you could argue, is a slightly weaker team than the last two qualifications. And Iran, you could argue, is a slightly stronger team, to be honest, from a technical standpoint, individually. However, then you have to argue, is the coach as good? We'll come to that, of course. I personally still believe our team is strong enough to beat South Korea. What do you guys think? Pezhman, do you think we could still beat South Korea? Do you think, we get a question from Persian at Persian Wall on Twitter, do you think we can go unbeaten like we did last time?
I think there will be a slip. It can be against Iraq or South Korea. I do believe the South Korean team is a decent team. Although we had a good track record against them, we must not forget that they have a good coach. They build up something really interesting, and I think although we have the advantage of not losing against them in like, how many years is it? 5 years, 7 years, something like that. South Korea is always South Korea. It's a tough game, but Iran can go unbeaten, of course. But I'm seeing a slip. It can even be against like one of the weaker teams, like Lebanon, because that haven't happened before. Against UAE, I can't see that happening because they are not good enough. But at this stage, depending on where the games are supposed to be played and if there going to be crowds and stuff like that kind of affect the players' mentality as well. But Iran will take care of this.
Sahand, obviously, South Korea, a very strong team still, with Hyung and Son, one of the best players in Asia of all time, you could argue. How do you think we'll fare?
I mean, I think that besides Son, they're weaker than previous years. I think it's like an aging squad, which they have a benefit of having a lot of experienced players, but there's really not a lot of foreign-based talent, I would say, compared to if you think about the previous South Korea teams we've played with people like Park from Man United, or Ki Sung-young for a long time was in the midfield. They had a lot of Bundesliga-based players, but that's more or less all gone. It's mainly a domestic team, and then just having Hwang Min Son and also Hwang from Leipzig, who barely played this year, I think. And so, yeah, that's really the only like very notable foreign players. I think they also have one player, young midfielder in Valencia, who plays sometimes. But on the whole, it's definitely, I guess, on paper, we wouldn't think it to be as strong as South Korea squads of previous years, and also, yeah, definitely older than before. So,
Yeah.
I don't see them as challenging as, say, a Japan would be to us, and even a team like Saudi Arabia, I think, would have posed a bigger threat, at least on paper, for us than this South Korea side.
So on top of that, the other team that we got in our group, we actually we were speaking before about trying to avoid Saudi Arabia because they can be quite a tough opponent. However, we got UAE, and they have some good players. They haven't been bad by any means over the last couple of years, and they could be a potential banana skin for the national team of Iran. I mean, it's not easy to say whether we're struggling sometimes against the Arabic teams, the Middle Eastern teams specifically. Is it a mental problem for the players, or is it psychologically difficult for them to face those teams? I don't know, but it's a potential banana skin. So what do we think? Do we think we could struggle against UAE? Go Sahand.
Honestly, I watched some of their qualification games, and I think that they might be a little bit better than in previous years. With, I think, especially the forward Ali Mabhout is quite prolific for Asian standards. But again, I don't think that they're going to be a super challenging opponent for us. I mean, keep in mind that, yeah, we have some psychological problems with some of the Arab teams. However, I think we showed in the previous little mini tournament that just passed with Iraq and Bahrain that the team can definitely overcome those hurdles with proper, mental preparation. And I don't think we had a lot of issues there compared to previously. And I think that will help the team moving forward in those sort of games. And then also I'd keep in mind that we have a lot of experience playing with, I would say, a similar level team, probably you could say even superior for sure, recently, which is Qatar, who we played quite frequently in past years in friendlies and also qualification. And we were, doing quite well with beating them. So I think that, yeah, I don't view it as a particularly hard challenge. For sure, the team needs to be ready for, for any sort of mental games that they will try to play. And if we do that, I think that from a technical standpoint, our level is high enough that we should beat them for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. Pezhman, I want to come to you. Sorry, by the way, that question regarding the UAE was asked by at SKKBUNZ and also at PGAP for Life 10. For you, Pezhman, the question comes from at Kamohebi from Instagram. He asks, Syria got third place last time in our qualification. They were the only team that actually scored goals against us in the last game. And they have some good players. However, we did beat them in the friendly in March. Could they be a surprise?
No. The only surprise will be the disappointment that Syrians will bring to the World Cup qualifiers, probably being last in the group or struggling alongside UAE or Lebanon, probably being dead last in the group, where the Syrian luck will end in this qualifying campaign. they will get smashed, hammered against all the teams. And why do I say that? Even though they had like a really good run before to heading to the qualifiers, I can't see the. I believe that the other teams will now step up and make that the difference that's needed. So Iran, Iraq, and South Korea will be the top 3 teams, and they will probably get between 4 to 6 points against Syria. So Syria will have to struggle against Lebanon and UAE for maybe trying to get to 3rd place if, let's say, Iraq will slip against UAE and some other teams. That will be their chance. They will live in the agar amma, what ifs kind of thing that we are used to in Iran back in the day. So I have no trust in this Syrian team.
Yeah, also just adding to that, I think that Syria's biggest weapons last time were the forward Omar Al-Soma, and also the attacking mid or forward also Kharbin. And I think they were quite dangerous, I think, in the games we played. And on an Asian level, both have been pretty good for their club teams and in Asian Champions League and stuff. And neither of them are being called up at the moment. And so especially without those two, I think that takes away basically their main offensive threat. So yeah, I don't really see Syria posing a major threat to anybody or at least us to get some points off us. I really don't see it.
Okay, let's go and hear from Sina from Radio Offside, who gave us his thoughts on the group. Okay, I'm joined by my good friend Sina from Radio Offside. Sina, how you doing, man?
Hi, Arya. I'm pretty good. Good to be here.
Glad to have you on Goal Bezan. I think this is your first time on Goal Bezan. I think you were on one of our Twitter. Have you been on Goal Bezan before? I don't know.
No, I haven't been in Goal Bezan, but
No.
I've been part of our show with Sina from Goal Bezan before.
Yeah, you were on one of our spaces though, weren't you? I think recently.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll have you on more in the future. Just explain to us a little bit about Radio Offside as well.
Yeah, sure. Radio Offside is a weekly pod mainly about European football, and but also we also try to cover Team Melli and some other stuff related to Iranian football as well. So if anybody is interested, you can find us with Radio Offside ID on all of the social medias and also on Castbox. And also we have been trying to produce more and more on our YouTube channel. So just hop in. We are trying to have some videos also about the ongoing Euro and also the situations that are going on around Team Melli as well.
Yeah, make sure to check out Radio Offside. They do some great work. So Sina, first thing I want to ask you, of course, is about the Group A draw. Iran was in the same group as South Korea for the 3rd time in a row now. What was your first reaction to the Group A?
Well, I think it's a very ideal group for us if we compare it to the other one. I'm happy that we don't need to face Australia and Saudi Arabia. And I think it's the ideal one. There is no easy or hard groups, I would say. All of the matches are going to be important, even with this group that we got. But I think it's a very ideal group, and we can definitely qualify from this. I think the most important thing is that Iran and South Korea are the only teams that have the experience from World Cup before. So I think there is a gap between these two and the other teams in the group. And I think they're still the favorites to qualify here. But also the other note is that we have troubles recently against Iraq, but they don't have any stable. They don't have a stable situation in my view, since Qatar's situation with their federation is not clear. So probably they're gonna replace him with somebody else. So they're not that much stable. And also on the other hand, if you want to say that we got Syria and they have been finished on top of their groups in the previous stage, but also Nabil Malul is also resigned from their team. So the situation of Syria is not that clear as either. So I think it's definitely better. If we compare it with, for example, getting Oman in our group, because I didn't want to get Oman and then start all of the talks in the media about Skočić, Branko, and everything like that. This could have caused some trouble for us just before the match and after the match. So I think it's better that we got Syria. But also it would have been fun. It would have been better maybe we got Vietnam instead of Lebanon. But I think it shouldn't matter for us. So I don't think we have a hard time to qualify from this group, but we should take it really, really, really seriously. So it's not something that we just got in the best group and we can qualify in any sense. No, it's going to be tough, but it's okay, I guess.
So obviously, we have a strong team. We did well in these last 4 matches to get to the final round of qualifiers under Dragan and Skočić, who is now, as we're discussing on our podcast, he's been chosen to stay on for the last round of qualifiers. What was your thoughts on that?
Well, to be honest, I was thinking, or I would have believed that 99.9% he will remain because of the situation and everything that we had in the media around Team Melli and everything like that. And I think when the federation says that we're going to try to see if we're going to continue with him or not, they were just bluffing. The idea was there from the past that he's going to stay if he qualified from the previous stage. I don't know. I mean, that's how it is. I don't like that he's gonna be our coach because even if we qualify, he will remain. It's not like that they say that, okay, he will qualify and then we will think about another coach. I'm not worried about this stage. I'm a little bit worried about the World Cup and the longer time. So I'm really not sure about Team Melli's performance when we reach to the World Cup. And my reasoning is that the players that we have currently are more experienced than the coach himself in terms of being in the World Cup, in the top leagues. So most of them, not most of them, but many of them have the experience from playing in the World Cup before, and many of them have the experience of playing in European football. But our coach doesn't have this experience. So it's a very, very new thing for him. So I think coach for Team Melli should be someone who has more experience, and he should be someone who can coach and manage the whole team, the whole squad. So I think in one sense, it's good that he also wants to prove himself because it's the biggest team that he's coaching in his whole career.
Yeah.
So he's trying to qualify both for Team Melli and also for himself. So that's good. We are on the same page with each other. But I mean, for the longer run, I'm not sure if he's adding that much value to the existing squad, and also if he can even improve this squad. So that's only my concern really at the moment. But I'm not sure if I don't think Federation has any potential coaches in their mind in the past, for example, 1 month or 2 months. If they have prepared someone, yeah, why not? Let's go with someone that we can rely on him for the longer run. But given the fact that probably they haven't done it or even they haven't thought about it, so okay, fair enough that we should say and stick with him.
Yeah, I think that's why it was a surprise to myself that people were trying to say that Carlos Queiroz is going to come back. But for me, that's not going to happen. So
no way.
So yeah. No, finally, I want to ask you, Sina, is obviously regarding the standings. Where do you think Iran will finish, and how do you think they'll do in Qatar?
Well, as I said, I'm comfortable that they're going to qualify as the first or the second team, so we will go directly to the World Cup. So I'm not that much worried. Something very strange should happen if we don't qualify, to be honest. But also, I mean, South Korea, we've been great in the past tournaments against them during Carlos Queiroz time, but we shouldn't neglect them because Paulo Bento is a very great coach, and he has been with South Korea for the past 3 years. So I think he knows his team very well. He knows the opponents very well. So they're going to be tough opponents. And also, Emirates is going to be tough as well. Van Marwijk is a great coach, and it's very interesting to know about this. Maybe some of your listeners do not know about this. Emirates has the exact same situation as us. So they sacked Van Marwijk December 2019, and then they replaced him with Ivan Jovanovic for 4 matches left in their qualification. But when the corona outbreak happened, they said that, okay, we just get you in because of the situation and the time that we have. But now that we have time, we will continue with someone else. Exactly the same situation that we had with Skočić, but we didn't replace him. We just continued with him for a year. So I would say that we wasted time for a year to just find someone else. But anyhow, so they sacked the next coach as well after a couple of friendlies, and then they brought back Van Marwijk, and Van Marwijk has done perfectly in the last matches for Emirates, and he knows the team very well as well, and he has the experience from the World Cup because he's a silver medalist from the World Cup. So I think they're going to be a tough opponent. There is no easy matches, but I think we have the great depth in our squad that we can definitely qualify. And also, this is the last World Cup that there are going to be only 32 teams in the World Cup. So from the next World Cup, it will be so easy to qualify. It will be harder not to qualify, I would guess, because there are going to be more than 40 teams in the World Cup, and Asia will get more teams. So let's enjoy the last competitive qualification, and then hopefully we can qualify.
Yeah, hopefully. Sina, thanks a lot for your time. I appreciate it. Once again, you can find Sina's podcast, Radio Offside. We'll have it in the description of all the podcasts on YouTube, SoundCloud, and all the good stuff. So check them out. Thanks for coming on, Sina.
Thank you so much, Arya. It's always a pleasure to talk with you about Team Melli, and it was a pleasure to be on Bezan for the first time. You're doing a great job, all of you, uncovering everything regarding Team Melli. Hope for the best.
Back now. The next thing we want to speak about, Sina touched on it in his segment, is regarding Dragan Skočić, who stays with the national team. Azizi Khadim, the IFF president, confirmed it, that he will stay until the end of the round, assuming, if we do qualify, then of course he'll take us to the World Cup as well. Guys, personally, if I was to give my opinion, I was happy with that decision. I think it keeps the continuity in the team. Skočić was getting somewhere. You could argue he wasn't doing great, but he was getting somewhere, and he was being flexible with his tactics, and he was able to get the best out of some of the players like Moharami, like Qualifiers, even Taremi Osman. I thought they did pretty well under him. So ultimately, I feel he is the right person to keep. There was rumors about Queiroz coming in, and we didn't even consider posting about that because it's not true. Those rumors are false. But anything that comes out of Iranian outlets that originates from Iranian outlets generally isn't true. So as a result, Skočić is staying. Guys, what's your first reaction? Pezhman.
I agree with you, Arya. I think he proven himself. I mean, there have been a couple of rumors about how he is with the team, and he is not maybe that kind of charismatic coach that Queiroz was, that bringing the team together and making it all for one, fighting against everybody but protecting some like his team. He doesn't seem to be that, but he is something that the Iran Football Federation have longed for in a long time. A foreign coach, although his experience is limited, he's been in Iran for a long time. So he's a foreign coach that can understand and accept the Iranian culture and the Iranian way of dealing with things, which is maybe not what we're used to as in Europe or in other countries. And that balance is probably one of Skočić's biggest pros or something that he can use. How he is as a coach and his tactics and whatnot, this is the time to prove himself. So far, he have done what's been needed of him. I'm happy that he is playing a couple of players that Queiroz talked a lot about, but never gave them a chance, like Samson. I'm glad that he's giving Moharami a decent chance. I'm glad that he's letting Taremi and Osman and Qolizadeh, one of the other players that Queiroz not really gave too late probably a chance. They're playing regularly now. So there's not a lot of people talking about the squad and players missing, because these players are doing what they need to do. So now it's up to him to prove himself against stronger opponents. It will be fun to see.
Sahand, I mean, obviously, we all know that ultimately the team needs continuity. They need to be able to keep this form from June. So you're happy with the decision?
Yeah, I think there's a few points that I want to touch on. I think overall I'm satisfied with Skočić being extended, or his contract being extended. I think that first of all, we have to be realistic about what the other options are or were. So I think that if we want to take into consideration the fact that the federation doesn't really have a lot of money right now, because of this whole Wilmot's case, especially, which cost them like $8 million or something for 3 games. In addition to the problems with sanctions that we're going to have, there's going to be some difficulties in transferring money to whoever the coach is, foreign coach is. So the coach has to be willing to accept that. Then we kind of reach a point where there's not already a lot of candidates available that are willing to accept, such conditions. Then you have to consider that we're already pretty late into the qualification phase. I mean, the last round is starting, and there's 1.5 years left until the start of the World Cup. So can a new coach really come in and take over this team and learn about the team, learn about the players? You have to expect these people haven't been following our national team like religiously for the past, 4 or 5 years. So they don't know what's happening. So then for them to learn the current state of the team, what we need to do, learn about the opposition, etc., it's going to be very unlikely. So in my mind, that only leaves basically, 2 foreign candidates. One of them is Skočić, and one of them you could say is Queiroz because he's available, and he has experience with this team. And then, we're really not sure. Like you say, there were some like random rumors. I mean, would he want to come back? Would the situation even allow for him to come back? Like, how much drama could be created around the national team if Queiroz came back right now? I think we can all agree that he's probably a superior coach to Skočić. I mean, from just an experience, and his CV speaks for itself. So given the fact that's not really a realistic option at this point, then yeah, I think Skočić was the best option. I mean, obviously there's going to be some level of intrigue to have the man who basically built this team and a lot of the current players, the Taremis, the Osmuns, that we're seeing now so much of, Ezzatullahi, of course, a lot of other players, Beiran Van. There's some level of wanting to bring him back and see what he can do with his own group that he really made. But I don't think it was really realistic. So from that perspective, I think Skočić was the best, foreign coach available. And then I don't really think that any domestic coach, Yahya probably would be the first option. And I don't think he's available either. And I don't think anybody else like Nick Hunam or whoever is really an upgrade to Skočić to warrant, dropping this guy who just won 7 games in a row. So from that perspective, I think it's realistic to stay with Skočić.
I think one person that would be very reluctant to have Queiroz come back into the national team is Mr. Khalilzadeh. I think he would be very, very upset to see him back as a national team head coach. So all I can say is I think he's having Skočić's back all the way.
I just gonna say something. I think Sahand's analyze was spot on. It was music to my ears, and it was a sober way of looking at things. So well done, Sahand.
Okay, let's go and hear from Dara Zarandi from PersianFootball.com. I'm joined by my friend Dara Zarandi, who works with PersianFootball.com. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Arya. How about yourself?
I'm all good. I'm all good. Glad to have you on the podcast for the first time. We've been trying to get you on for a little while now, Dara, but obviously through different issues here and there, we've not managed to, but this time we have. Just give the listeners a little bit of background about yourself, where they can find you on social media and your work.
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter. It's just literally my first and my last name, Dara Zarandi. And some of my work that I've done just like on Iranian soccer, I've written articles for PersianFootball.com in the past. I also help moderate the site, so I participate in the forums a lot over there as well. So yeah, predominantly that's kind of like the work that I do. Avid Iranian football fan, just like the rest of you guys.
Excellent. Okay, so first question, just very quickly, give us your reaction to Group A. Obviously we were grouped with South Korea, Iraq, etc. What was your first reaction to that?
Very pleased. As the draw was happening, of course, it kind of started their way from the pots on the lower side from like 6 and up. So just as the draw was happening, pretty quickly I was able to say, hey, I really hope we get into Group A. And the reason for that was because once they got to pot 3 and they drew Saudi Arabia in pot B, I said to myself, okay, so at that point in the draw, it was going to be, I like to always think of Asia's giants as Iran, Saudi Arabia, South Korea, Japan, and Iran. I think Iran, Saudi Arabia, South Korea, Japan, and Australia. Those 5 teams.
Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry, got lost in the in the count there. So those 5 teams. So in other words, you already knew that there was going to be a team, a group that was going to have 3 teams of the giants, and then there was going to be a group that had 2 of the giants. So in other words, I was just making sure, I wanted to absolutely make sure that we were in the group that had 2 of the giants instead of 3. So basically, as the draw was happening, I wanted to make sure that we were in the good situation, and we did wind up being in the good situation, only having South Korea in our group among the giants, and the rest of the teams, they're all solid. They're all going to give us a tough time, but I think we should be able to get the job done pretty easily.
Yeah, and then obviously the other news that we had recently after the qualifying matches in June was that Skočić will remain as head coach of the national team. I know yourself, you obviously would have liked to have maybe had someone new come in. What was your kind of opinions on that, and how do you think we'll progress?
So Skočić, I think he did some good stuff. He did some stuff that I wasn't super fond of. At the end of the day, I think for the situation that we're in, it wasn't going to be realistic for us to have anything other than maybe an Iranian option versus Skočić. That's just the reality of the, I feel like the circumstances of the federation right now, with everything that happened with Wilmots and getting him his money. Of course, there was whispers of Queiroz potentially coming back, but I think that was just all rumors. I don't think that was anything that was actually legit. But all in all, I'm happy with it. I think that the team at this point, it needs stability. At the end of the day, Skočić got good results. Looking at from the friendly games that we started with him at the end of last year through to this year, he has gotten good results against some decent oppositions as well. Even the friendly against Bosnia, Bahrain is of course a decent team, and we beat them very easily. All these things need to be taken into account, and I think that for the situation that he was brought in, it was a tough task. And at the end of the day, he delivered. We asked him to give us 4 wins, and he got us those 4 wins. So I think it would be unfair if we didn't renew his contract. But again, I still do believe that there are some issues and gaps and holes that he needs to identify for me to have more confidence in him going forward.
And obviously, on top of that, where do you think with Skočić, Iran will finish in this final round of qualification?
I'd like to think first, hopefully, but I think we're going to battle it out to get somewhere between 2nd and 3rd. I think we'll be right on the border between 2nd and 3rd. I think that the games against Iraq are going to be pretty difficult. I think that we should be able to, anytime on paper we're looking at Iraq, we should be able to beat them. But we know it's never that simple because there comes all these mental challenges and these mind games and everything that comes with playing Iraq or other Arab teams. So I do want to be optimistic and say that we will finish first, but I just, again, with the holes that I have seen in the team, with his setup that he has right now for Skočić, I don't feel confident that we will finish first. I feel like it will be second, or potentially third, but if I have to go with one, I'll go with second place.
Okay, great. I appreciate your time. Hopefully we can have you back on the podcast when the games start back. And yeah, but thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Arya.
All right, so we're back. Let's finish off, guys, with some fan questions. Okay, so fan questions. First one is from Hakamanesh 1378. He asks, just regarding the formation, essentially. Personally, I believe Skočić is going to kind of stick with a variation of a 4-4-2. I don't think he's going to play Taremi as a left winger. I think we're pretty much know that he's going to play a 2-striker formation. So, I mean, in football, there are really not that many 2-striker formations. You've got a 4-4-2. You've got maybe like a diamond midfield, 4-4, so like a 4-3-1-2. And you maybe have a 3-5-2. Other than that, there's not really that many 2-striker formations. So ultimately, I think that kind of 4-4-2 is what he'll stick with. Don't know, do you guys want to add anything to that?
I think that from a formation standpoint, it's quite interesting question because Skočić seems to be okay with changing systems and trying new systems, changing systems in important games. I mean, we saw him start with like a 3-man defense, like 3-5-2 in some friendly games against Bosnia that went pretty well. And then we saw him use a 4-3-1-2 against Uzbekistan and then start with a 4-3-1-2 against Bahrain, which played really badly in the first half. And then he was flexible enough to say, okay, this isn't working. I'm going to play a 4-3-3 in the second half. And that was probably one of our best performances in the second half against Bahrain for Team Melli in many years. And then he went to a 4-4-2 against Iraq. So I think he's flexible in his formation. I doubt that he will be set like, I'm only going to play this formation. I don't think he seems like that kind of coach. But I would like him to maybe pick with the formation and kind of stick with it just to give some more continuity. But my personal opinion is that the 2-striker formation isn't really our best formation. I think when Taremi plays off the left, like he did it in the second half against Bahrain, that is actually his best position for Team Melli, because when him and Osman play up top together, I think they kind of crowd out each other's space and they kind of occupy similar positions. And you have to keep in mind that our 2 most dangerous players are Osman and Taremi. So for the opposition defense, for them to be in a maybe like a 5 or 10 meter square, that makes it easier for them to defend the 2 most dangerous players. And I think that idea of Taremi coming from the left and kind of being the facilitator a little bit more, and then Osman being the very obvious 9 in the box and finishing the chances, I think that has a better flow for our team.
Yeah, I think you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there. That's, hopefully over a couple of more games, Skočić will find his team. Speaking on Osman, Pezhman, he'll obviously be suspended for the first match against Syria, as he has a yellow card accumulation. At Hardy Seper asks who should replace him against Syria.
Well, we would love to know what the user thinks as well. I don't know if they written any response.
No,
I would probably say Karim Ansarifard. He's been a really good super sub, and he should get rewarded with a start. Kaveh Rezai would then probably be the first sub coming in as a striker. But yeah, I'll go with Karim Asrafad. He's done really good in Greece, and he's proven himself in Team Melli time after time.
I would actually go a little bit different. I actually would use it as an opportunity to play a one striker formation. You know, if Osman's not there, I would just put Taremi up front, and then you could have maybe, you know, Kole Zade and Godus just off him, you know, with Amiri in midfield and maybe with like Nurulahi and Izzatullahi. So there's a lot of we have a lot of players, so it's not as if, you know, we're even if Osman isn't available, we still have a lot of players, as you said, Ansari Fard, Kaveh Rezai.
And I think you guys make good points, and there's Allahverdi as well.
And we're going to come on to that. That's the next question. So at Maliki Andrew, he asks regarding young players like Yasin Salmani. I know Sahand has a lot to say about him, Syed Manish, many others. So what do we think? Do we think that these players, I mean, obviously they should be called up, but do you think that they should be kind of breaking into the team? We didn't see Qayyadi really start any matches, you know, so there is still space for players, but how do we see them progress?
I think Qayyadi is working his way into being a consistent call-up. So the first step to being a starter for your national team for somebody who's like under 23 is to first be like a consistent call-up. So I think that he's being integrated. I think we're going to see more of him. And I think you can see that the lack of experience maybe in a Team Melli jersey from a mental standpoint can play on young players at times. Like those chances Qayyadi missed, I think it's not really his level to miss those chances. And he never really misses such chances for Istiqlal. So I think that's just kind of like the mental aspect of bringing a super young player into the team. But besides Qayyadi, I really like Yasin Salmani from Sepahan. I think he's probably the best midfield talent who's from Iran in the past, I would say like 5 or 6 years, who's come up. I think Shekari was good, but I think that Salmani's more complete player than him and hopefully fulfills his potential. So I think he should definitely be looked at. And I think those are the main ones, with Allahverdi, of course, who is going to be in the conversation. He's having a great season in Ukraine and will probably make a big move in the next year.
Yeah. Next question comes from Javid Azadi Iran. He actually asked 2 questions. The first one is Purali Ganji starting over Kanani Zadegan. Personally, I would like to see that. I think Purali Ganji is a very important player for the national team. He's been at many of the big competitions we've been at. In fact, he's been to 2 last Asian Cups and the last World Cup. So for me, he is one of the most experienced players in the team. And personally, I don't think Kanani is necessarily so good to the point where you start him over Purali Ganji. You know what I mean? So, I would agree with that. I would say Purali Ganji should start. But, if someone's playing well, you can't really drop them, The other one is he's asking Hoy Safi at left back over Milad Mohammadi. Pezhman?
Oof. Listen, we're going to keep this short because we talked about Safi several times, but he doesn't seem to have it anymore. The thing that made him special, he's lacking that, and I'm afraid that can punish him and the national team against stronger opponents. So I would choose Milad Mohammadi over Ehsan Safi.
I think me and Sam were saying about this just before we started this pod. Hoy Safi is by far better technically as a footballer over Milad, but Milad Mohammadi is a better defender, and the left back position is built for defenders. It's not built for footballers who are technically great. Yes, sometimes you can have really good players like Roberto Carlos, but listen, we're the national team of Iran. We're not trying to get Cafu and Roberto Carlos at fullback. We're trying to just get some players who can defend and do a good job. Milad, yes, he's had some poor games, and that's true, but he is playing in Europe, and ultimately he is playing for a good team in Europe. So I still expect him to be the starting left back. However, Hoy Safi is the captain, so it's not easy to just say no to him, you know. So it's definitely Skočić's, you know, he has to make that choice at who he plays, and obviously Vahid Amiri can also play at left back, so there is a lot of options. Guys, listen, I appreciate your time. Hopefully you guys who are listening enjoyed the podcast. Of course, remember to check out part 1 if you haven't already. We interviewed journalists and experts from each of the countries that we're playing against. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Amazon and Castbox. Visit our website at goalbazanpodcast.com, and we'll see you very, very soon. Guys, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Arya, as always.
Arya, well done.
Hello, my name is Allahverdi. You are listening to Bezan podcast.
Why your team in World Cup? No.